So there's actually 3 questions in here that came in, but they're all related, so I decided to put them on one slide. And these are some career-oriented questions looking towards the future. Let me walk through them, and then you'll see why I put them all on the same slide. So first question, what are the mandatory skills required to survive for the next 5 years in the networking industry? That's a question. So looking ahead, I want to keep doing this for 5 years. What do I have to know? 2, do traditional network engineers need to start learning containers and Kubernetes, Kubernetes to stay relevant? There was a longer question there, but that the person had sent it, but that's at the crux of it. And then the last question, if you were to start your career in 2019, would you still do networking? What skills would you learn? So these are all pretty related career kind of stuff, and it's interesting that a lot of us that are old school networkers are seeing the transition of what's happening next and going. So I'll start off with just a brief comment. So I got 2 kids that are roughly college age, and I've told both of them, you don't want to get into IT. The job that I've done for the last 20 odd years probably isn't going to be there. If you want to be a developer, be a developer. If you want to be an infrastructure person, I don't know that you want to go get a degree in that right now necessarily. I would maybe focus more on development. And I'm not even gonna qualify that because I have a microphone and talk a lot on the podcast and stuff. Let me get the take from you guys.
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So going well specifically to the career aspect of it. Yeah, I would agree with you to some degree, because what like we are seeing with our customers is not everything's going to the cloud. Like big enterprise applications are coming back, like those kinds of things, SAP type builds, and then people are running some clusters on site to be able to control development costs, because you can beat up the cloud on price if you buy a fixed asset and just beat the piss out of it, right? Now, but the other part of that though is eventually those solutions are gonna get hosted, right? Those big things that have to come on premise to control their cost and availability and deal with the provider or the developer of it. Eventually the next big application, like I talked to you, we're working with the gaming industry a lot. It's only a matter of time before those guys come out with SaaS applications that meet their compliance requirements, those kinds of things. It's that trend. So we saw the cloud shift once, the lift and shift. Now it's coming back a little bit. I mean, new developments definitely in the public clouds, and then not that there isn't private clouds, but it's going to be both for a long time, but the detailed and skill level probably will eventually just continue to diminish, but people still need to get to the clouds, so there's still a lot of plumbing to do on the infrastructure side. I mean, I don't know how soon 5G wireless is going to come out, but really be everywhere and be fast and be everything we need it to be. But there's still a lot of plumbing, so there's some longevity in it. But yeah, I think very long term, like if you think you're going to get 30 years out of it, no, probably not.
Now, Ned, you're a cloud guy, so almost, your focus isn't networking, but you have all this cloud. Do you have a take on this, these career questions?
Yeah, and I think just as a broader question for infrastructure IT, if you want to survive for the next 5 years, you probably don't need to change anything. You'll be fine. If you want to excel or have a career after that 5-year mark, then you're going to need to learn something new. And I think to a certain degree, people are either going down one of 2 paths, either becoming like uber generalists, so just being able to talk to a lot of different technologies fairly well, or going extremely specific on one particular area, which means that if that's an area that blows up, you can make a lot of money because you know it really well. If it's an area that descends into nothingness, then you're going to kind of lose out. So I think it's probably good to hedge your bets if you want to be specialized, to at least kind of go with the trident approach of a couple ancillary skills to keep yourself relevant. So if you're in networking, maybe the closest thing to you is, I don't know, storage or the compute layer. I see a lot of transition into sort of networking and virtualization. So if that's something that interests you, maybe just start getting a background in that. I do agree that some stuff is coming back on-prem, and a lot of it's moving to SaaS because the SaaS vendors are getting really good at getting through all the compliance requirements and getting the certifications and making it cost effective for you not to host it on-prem. people who made that first move to the cloud, like lift and shift style, they're realizing that that is not cost effective. And so they're pulling back their resources and maybe rethinking their approach a little bit. So you've got some continued relevance there. Do you need to start learning containers and Kubernetes? Those are kind of tied up in the same realm, but I'd say more importantly, it's just important to really understand the overlay network and what are the different technologies that you use to deploy that overlay. Maybe that's NSX, maybe that's what's called Weave or Flannel or any of those other strange open source names. But it would be good to at least understand those constructs. And lastly, I think everyone needs to be able to automate and have a little bit of programming background. You don't have to be like a full-blown programmer. Lord knows I'm not. My Terraform scripts are okay. My Golang stuff is awful. I know it's awful. It'll eventually get better, but I'm certainly not a developer by any stretch of the imagination. But I understand what the developers are trying to do, and I understand how to talk to an API. And that's going to just become more and more relevant over the next, 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and say where I'm seeing network going is the role of the average network engineer is going away. You're seeing a move towards things like hyperconverged with things like Nutanix or whatever. So the networking need is super simple to get what the company used to get out of an average network engineer. Or it's the other way where, what Tommy was saying, like, look, this is big and it's expensive and we've got to bring it back into house and we've got to go like full on large scale architecture. And again, like that kind of middle of the road network engineer's role, I think is starting to fade a little bit. As far as, if I was to start today, I would lean away from networking just because we've been so hesitant to change and adopt new things. It's super frustrating for me to try to stay relevant because of that. And, we are talking about things like automation as if we've like invented fire, but this is stuff that's been in computing for like 20 years. And so it's just hard for me to be in an industry that's such a laggard that I would end up looking at something like cloud or even looking at containers and then learning networking as the secondary skill behind that to make me better at that primary skill.
Kurt, I want to ask you a very pointed question. You're in what I imagine is I imagine it to be a very large network, very large size data center, just because of the volume you guys do there.
I have more than one switch.
Yeah, I'm sure. In that context, is there enough that you and your team are very focused just on networking, or are you finding you have to be literate in other skills as well?
So I took notes while people were talking to answer this. To answer your very specific question, automation and that kind of tooling and focusing on developing the skills means that you can do more with less. So you can have a more focused team, which really comes down to, in my mind, like I think it was Ned was saying, you don't have to be a full suite software engineer, but you do need to know how to think about things as repeatable processes, how to break things down. Automating those is even better. Taking runbooks, taking processes for troubleshooting or config deployments. You may not be able to make all the problems go away, but you can certainly speed up your response time. So you really do need to think about how to be repeatable. You don't have to be an expert software developer. My team spends a reasonable amount of time trying to break our tasks down into repeatable processes, whether it's Ansible or Python or other, scripting technologies. We do have a dedicated NRE team founded like 2 years ago that we set up to focus on building the building blocks, but the idea was giving those building blocks to the network engineers to build on top of. But to the questions in the slide, what technologies and skills you want for the next 5 years. I mean, heck, that changes every 5 minutes. Every 6 months we have a new technology, or we've built on top of the last technology. But it's super important to speak the language of your customers. At Twitter, I use the term customer to mean everybody on the other side of the blue cable. The network exists to serve the applications, the business, whatever, right? So if you need to be able to talk VMware virtualization, Docker, Kubernetes, being able to troubleshoot that, it's the same is true for cloud environments, Amazon, Azure, or GCP. Network problems don't go away just because they're in the cloud. You don't have a switch that you can run like show route on, but you still have to help troubleshoot. And it's been my experience that the network engineer is the last person who gets to get off an incident call. You spend a lot of time helping the rest of the customers troubleshoot their problem or look into the stack. So if you don't know how to help them troubleshoot their software, you're in trouble.